basically, I wanted to do a quick video. Last night, I asked people to send me any ideas or requests for Tailwind CSS tutorials, and I thought rather than try and respond to each one over Twitter, partly because my arm is still quite sore from the operation last week, I would do it as a video, but also look at taking any of the ones that are worth more of a look at a longer as a blog post, really, and put them into my Trello board. So what we will do quickly is change this to my window. You'll have to forgive me because this is the first time that I'm using Ecamm Live to do this, so there may be one or two times I don't quite know what I'm doing. In fact, I'm going to take these off because I can't quite hear myself. Right, so let's see. I did get a couple of questions last night. So I answered a couple of those. You can see I've got 34 notifications. Some of these are to do with things I've posted this morning, so not quite the same, but let's go in there. Okay, so let's have a look. Right, here we go. So we had one here. I might just go back to the beginning. Multi-level responsive top navigation would be useful. So have I done that yet? So just so everyone's clear, I like to try and use Trello for keeping a note of any blog posts that I'm planning on writing. So multi-level menu with Tailwind CSS. And then I try to go into a little bit more detail. So what I might do is copy the link to the tweet, and then look at building out something that is a little more complicated than a basic menu. Tailwind CSS, and write it up as a tutorial. There we go. And then yeah, that should literally just be tagged with I'm going to change this. I'm going to create Tailwind CSS as a thing. I'm going to edit that and change that to grey. I tend to try to keep the things I grouped the same color on Trello, mainly because it means I can do this. Why am I not seeing the labels? No idea why I'm not seeing labels, but anyway, come back to that later on and figure out why that's not appearing. Anyway, so let's have a look. Ashley asked for a tutorial specific to React. I'm not I know a little bit of React. I know enough of it to be critical of it, but my day-to-day knowledge of React is really not there. So as I said to Ashley last night, what I might do, React is on my to-do list of things to learn more deeply this year. So what I might do is look at trying to tie those two in together. So sort of using Tailwind as a crutch as I work through how JSX templates work with React in general. So that one won't be one that I do anytime soon, unfortunately. But her other request of incorporating Tailwind with Sass is something that I will look at doing. That's a relatively easy one, and I think if I am right, it's already done. Yep, so Sass and Tailwind, how to set them up together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that. Just go into that quickly. I'm going to look at showing how to do that in Gulp and in Mix. Now, I prefer Mix. I used to use Gulp all the time. I think it's probably a good idea to show how it works with both, just so everyone has a quite a clear understanding of those two things. What I'll also probably do is look at talking about how you use it in single-use components in things like Vue and maybe React and Angular if I can find some document examples. I haven't used Angular since version 1, so I'm quite out of practice with where that's up to now. I know they completely redid the API, and that kind of was a bit of something that made me not want to continue using Angular at the time. Anyway, what was the next one? So Nora Zepes, I think, sorry if I butchered your name there, asked, is there a limit to using HTML classes to design a web page too much? For example, changing something would affect changing the same class in a lot but not all places, and when should a dev think about mixing Tailwind custom CSS classes? So I wasn't 100% sure what Nora meant when they asked this, so I think what I took that as was they were asking whether or not can you go too far on the semantic CSS, so descriptive names route, where you maybe describe something as a card or a media card or a form label, that type of thing, where you have an issue with it interfering with other parts of the CSS. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about functional / atomic / utility CSS is that it breaks that barrier between those two things, so you don't necessarily have to worry about this style impacting another thing. It's just whether or not that very element has that class applied will have that. And in terms of mixing it, I think, as I said in response, I tend to try to build utility first, and not utility 100%. I don't think that sticking with functional CSS all the way through is a great idea. I think there are times that it does make sense to abstract it out or extract it out to a component. And it's one of the reasons why I really like TailwindCSS, is because Adam Watham's approach to this has been quite nuanced in saying that it's utility first. Build it with utility classes and then extract to components where it makes sense. So things like buttons is a great example of that type of thing. Let's have a look. Sorry, pardon me. Some nice full feature modals and mega menus is something that Owen Melbourne requested. Obviously, I've already got mega menus down, but modals are quite a good shout. What I might do, let's see. I'm thinking let's combine that with Vue, because I'm trying to get more to grips with Vue this year. It's not something that it's something I've used before to do minor state management, but I've never really deep dived into it. And one of the tools that I really want to try and get to grips with this year is Nuxt.js. So I need to learn Vue more deeply. Sorry, my dog is walking around. So yeah, let's combine that with Vue and let's use one of the example components. So that's a good one. What I will do is I will just copy the link to that just so I can message Owen once that's actually done, because I think it's always nice to at least let people know when you've actually written something up. KDW, how to incorporate Purge CSS in projects, in particular Gatsby Next Nuxt projects. At applying Vue single files with style lang works great, makes everything easy. Would be great to see a video on it to help others. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. one of the things I really like about scoped, the scoped components approach, yes, there are issues with separation of responsibilities, and I think a lot of the time my issues are more with usability in terms of code editors not necessarily picking up that you are in a block of HTML when you're typing, and then sort of losing the ability to use things like Emmet, which are massive time savers. Probably more a configuration issue on my end, but it's still something that kind of makes it a little bit harder to use. But yeah, no, definitely. That is a really good shout. So I think I put something about Purge CSS in there, or did I not? No. So Purge CSS and Tailwind CSS, a match made in heaven, because it is. Now I've got that working on a project that I built in Statamic, and I think sorry, dogs just dragged the bed out of the crate. Where was I? Yeah, I've got a project that I built in Statamic that uses Tailwind and CSS, Purge CSS to really great effect, reducing this file size down from, I think it was, I think the file size was something about 48 or 50 kilobytes, and I got it down to about 4 kilobytes, so mental in terms of the amount of compression that is available. But let's just say how to use Purge CSS and Tailwind CSS with various different projects. Okay. Let's see. Redoing some Bootstrap components and layouts in Tailwind. Be useful for people like me who do websites occasionally, would love to move over, but are afraid of being without a full framework. No, that's a great shout. There are some existing websites out there, Tailwind components or Tailwind CSS components. That is, I can't remember who it is who does that, so apologies. But I know I was looking at it yesterday, and they are looking at trying to develop a database of different components. So it might be a case of me looking at building out some of the Bootstrap components and then possibly submitting it to that. We'll have to see whether or not that's sort of okay in the gist of copyright and stuff, but I'm pretty sure it should be fine. So let's have a look. Yeah, so let's just put this in, copy the link. So this would be translate some Bootstrap components to Tailwind CSS as examples. Let's go in there, put that link there. Create a checklist and ask Borek B for some examples they would like doing, in case there is anything in particular they want to see. Yeah, okay. Do you know what? Let's do it now. Hey, Borak, are there any particular example components that you'd like to see translated into Tailwind CSS. Let me know, and if there are, I'll put them together as a video as well as a post. Okay, awesome. Right, so that can now be ticked off. That's a productive day already. Okay, more from Nora, totally agree with you. Layout wise, flex, always use Tailwind and try to use a bit more. Some parts, when something becomes repetitive, use that custom class. Other reason for custom classes, animations. Yep, no, that is absolutely fine. Yeah, and Nora's right, you know, for that type of thing, you do want to try and leverage other things. Personally, if you're going to use something like PostCSS, it makes perfect sense to effectively pull in a library like animate.css. You know, the work that they've done is absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, basically, as long as you are whitelisting the classes or you're passing in the templates that you actually use, pardon me, sorry, PostCSS is smart enough to recognize that and to basically ensure that it isn't pulling out those particular classes and the ones that are dependent on it. So it's not a bad way of doing that without having to try and rewrite an entire animation library yourself. Right, let's keep going up. Okay, so Niels is asking for the best way to integrate Tailwind into existing Angular projects. Yeah, no, that's a really good shout. I think my only concern with that would be that into an existing Angular project. I think realistically to do that well, I'd probably need to have access to an Angular project. So it might be the type of thing that I reach out to Niels and ask him. Yeah, that's quite a difficult one. I mean, refactoring existing projects with this type of thing is really useful. We actually did this during my day job, where we integrated Tailwind into a website that actually uses Bootstrap already, and we ended up reusing or using the namespacing functionality that's built into Tailwind, which was really useful because it meant that we were able to basically use Tailwind alongside Bootstrap without there being any conflicts. Of course, it does make it a little bit more difficult when it comes to sort of refactoring that website and moving away from Bootstrap, but in all honesty, the hassle of trying to add on to, you know, classes within Bootstrap and worrying about that type of thing, the couple of extra characters and the little bit of, you know, sort of filtering that we'll have to do when we go to remove those is worth it for the time saving up front. So let's just quickly make a thingy there. So look at how to integrate Tailwind into existing projects, e.g. Angular ones. This is ultimately one of the biggest problems with CSS and JavaScript these days. It is not possible to know every framework. And it kind of makes it a little bit difficult to sort of be very specific, but you know what? It's a good learning experience. It's a good way to focus some learning. So Andy Bell's is something else to do. Grid stuff would be nice. So a little note about that. Adam does have a plugin out already for Tailwind that enables you to be able to use Grid. We use it quite heavily in my day job. Using Grid. So what that will be is talk about the plugin. I think Adam, and obviously I'm not speaking for Adam here, but I think I remember seeing that he wrote something about them looking at putting Grid into the actual core code for V1. Might be mistaken there, because I know he's also said that grid isn't necessarily something that works perfectly with utility first, or even as functional CSS. The way he's managed to get it working, to be fair, is great. Obviously, there are times that when we've been using it that we've had to abstract it out to components to get the maximum use of it. But yeah, on the whole, it's not been too bad. But yeah, I'll talk about the plugin, talk about fallbacks for things like IE11. That's one thing that we've had with a recent project where we need to support up to IE11 because we deal with a lot of corporates and government companies. So sometimes they are still stuck on older versions of Windows because their IT departments won't allow them to use anything other than IE. And that presents problems for us in terms of needing to make sure that we support that. Not to say that the websites have to look the same, but they have to at least be functional. So we've come up with a couple of things that enable us to do that. So I think that'd be quite a good thing to talk about there. And when to use grid versus flex. Now, I won't go into too much into that. Rachel Andrew and several people have written a lot about when you should use CSS grid versus flexbox. I think ultimately they've covered that off far more effectively than I ever could. So yeah, it might be a case of just linking to a couple of those for that. So let's just, I always try to like replies just to let people know that I've actually read it and that I at least have acknowledged that they took the time to actually respond, because it's nice. Adib Hannah, no, that's the type of thing that'd be great, because at the end of the day this could easily run away, and I'm going to need people who have experience in areas that I don't. Ross, no specifics. Great to see prepping content though. Thank you. The why behind Tailwind, best practices and how to get set up super quick. That's a good show. Now, I frequently will. I'm just going to copy that because actually that's not too bad a title. That straight from the off. I quite frequently will use the CDM version of Tailwind, so the precompile thing, if I'm just testing out a couple of things. I do have quite a customized Tailwind file, which uses some differences from the defaults. Things like text sizes tend to be on the 4 scale rather than sort of 2XL scale, 4XL scale that you get by default. I also have a lot more things that are available within that, mainly because I use Purge CSS, so it makes it easy for me to strip a lot of stuff out if we need to. But the CDN is absolutely fine for getting up to speed quite quickly. Why? I'm hoping that I'm going to be doing a talk later this year about that, or at least a case study into sort of why CSS does work, Tailwind does work in the real world, and getting set up super quickly. That might be good for, in fact, let's just quickly make it again. Getting set up super quickly might be a good series. How to do it in different tools. I suppose at the end of the day, getting something set up in Statamic is different from getting it set up in WordPress, is different from getting it set up in Nux, is different getting it set up in React. So I think I can do a sort of one that kind of covers it for the majority of things, but then sort of breaks it down a little bit more for other things. Right, so that's a great shout. Are there any particular tools you'd want to see a setup guide for? Has our Parajita actually got a working example of a Tailwind? Let's have a quick look. I don't know why I've just done that. Ben. Let's close that. Let's view the source. Yeah, I would guess just from looking at that, that is Tailwind. Or is it fix things? Yep, that is Tailwind. There's a couple of additional classes, but yeah, no, that all looks fine. Awesome. Yeah, no, that's quite a nice, simple menu. Might make reference to that. Parajita, basic workflows, configure Tailwind to represent your design system. Yeah, no, absolutely 100% agree with that. Use utility classes to style the elements, but it's clear as a repeating pattern of utilities. Might change composing utility classes into a single class using @apply. Yeah, no, absolutely 100% agree with all that. Hello, Luna. What is it you want? Do you want the toilet? Okay, give me 2 minutes, I'll take you out. How to set up with Laravel is something Eli is asking about. That's a very good shout. Laravel is something I've spent quite a bit of time learning recently, mainly because I've been getting a lot more into Statamic. So setting up Tailwind with Laravel. Now, if I remember right, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure there is actually already the option to have it in. I might be mistaken with that. I mean, it's pretty simple to actually get that set up because Adam's quite heavily involved with Laravel, and Tailwind really is sort of, its adoption's been spurred by the Laravel community. So I can have a look at that. See what the existing docs are. If the existing docs are great, yep, fair enough. I'll just link to those. No point in rewriting the wheel. But so have a look. Let's just quickly get the link to that because, as I said, I always like to try and tweet people once something's been written up. Beauty of this, Tailwind single source truth, design system changes, update. Yep, no, that is our Parajita is basically spot on with that. There was a tweet by one of my friends, Jay George, who basically was sort of pointing out one of the things that can go very wrong with a utility first functional CSS approach, which is that if everybody starts writing up their own classes, it can get a bit of a mess. Whereas having effectively a set system such as Tailwind, it means that you can keep that as a single source of truth. If anybody needs to go and add stuff, it's fairly easy to go and add it to that file and keep it consistent. And yeah, as he says, if you change the compose style, it's still defined within terms of the Tailwind's classes. So yeah, no, absolutely spot on. Maybe an article or directory of links to how to set them up with certain frameworks. Yeah, no, that's fair, Adrian. Yep, everybody keeps asking me for the deep end. A multi-level responsive top navigation. It's one of the hardest things to build on a modern website, partly because of the sheer amount of data that you're dealing with, the sort of number of devices, that type of thing. So it's a good project. It might be the type of thing that I potentially pitch to someone like Smashing Magazine or CSS Tricks rather than sort of writing it for myself, because I think it's that type of thing where it's quite a big time investment. And if I'm going to write that up, I want to try and make sure it gets out to as many people and helps as many people as possible. Masone, be interested in best practices, practical applications. How do you go about elements with tons of classes? When do you start extracting classes? Yep, no, that's absolutely fine. So that's something that I want to talk about at a conference, hopefully later in the year. Is, you know, what is that breakpoint? What is the point that you start going, I'm repeating myself a lot? Typically, just to give a quick answer, I found that because I tend to work in components rather than building full pages, it makes it a little bit easier to manage this type of stuff. So again, you know, best practice, I would say, with all code anyway, is to try and break things down into components, even if you're pulling it in the most basic way with a PHP include. Obviously with caching, because you don't want to be pulling it in every single time, but it's a good thing to break it down. That's why a big advocate of templating languages like Twig, Antlers, Pug, Jade, whatever it's called these days, to try and make it a little bit easier to manage and maintain that type of stuff. And I think the vast majority of these are potentially going to be lights. Yeah, I think this is sort of where we're getting towards the end. Yeah, I think that is pretty much all of them for the time being. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go away and I am going to start to try and flesh some of these out. Work out where the best place to do it, work out whether it's going to be a video or whether it's going to be a blog article, and then we'll go from there. So until then, I will see you very, very soon.